Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about the decision by the Republican chair of the House Armed Services Committee to pull the plug on the inquiry into the U.S. military strike that killed two survivors, the second strike from September 2nd, a mere 10 days after a ballyhooed announcement with the Democratic top dog on the House Armed Services Committee that they were going to do rigorous oversight, really look into it. Now, less than 2 weeks later, Rogers suddenly says, I've got all the information I need. It's fanciful to think he's got all the information he needs. Things have only gotten more cloudy and controversial in the 10 days since, with the kind of different views along party lines of what the video that we haven't seen, of course, shows about the second strike and the whole controversy about what's the supposed legal justification from the administration, and could it possibly give any defense to what seems like, at least to the Democrats who have observed it and talked about it, completely harrowing and basically a cold-blooded murder. And I say that with an asterisk, not because it's the act is any different, but if we were in a law of war framework, the term would be a bit different: extrajudicial killing. If we're in a regular situation, because there's no war between us and people in boats carrying drugs, then it's just flat out murder. That would seem still to be a very keen, pitched, and consequential issue to get to the bottom of. But suddenly Rogers said, "Nah, I'm okay." Now, recall, we had bipartisan support, not just him and Smith, not just the House, but also the Senate. They heard from the admiral in charge, operational charge of the mission, spoke to them behind closed doors and not under oath. Now, apparently something else has happened. Rogers had a confidential conversation. Smith, the ranking Democratic member, was also on it, but with Admiral Halsey, the man who resigned or was basically forced out by Hegseth for being resistant to this whole mission, at least as it's been reported. So some kind of call with him and behind the scenes conversation that is completely opaque to us has resulted in this very dramatic, complete about face. What it means, will he be able to work his will, or will there be political pushback saying, "Are you kidding? We need testimony, we need the video, etc." And then what about the whole Senate inquiry? It's just, a complete kind of haymaker out of the blue. So there's a backstory. We don't know the backstory. We may not ever know, or not soon know, the backstory. But for now, the chair, and this is the kind of power the chairs have, of the House Armed Services Committee, says a big never mind in circumstances when they haven't scratched the surface of what went on in that second strike, killing the two people that seem to have been just clinging to debris and completely helpless, and in the terms of law of war or combat, and therefore absolute illegitimate targets. So that's the first big development in the strikes from today. There's another, which is the revelation, and this really kind of joins up the administration's viciousness and ways of thinking in the immigration area, which is the initial plans apparently were to take any survivors from these sorties, of which there now been 24 and 80 plus people have been killed. In other words, people like the two clinging to their lives, whom the law of war forbade to try to kill, and instead take them to. It's almost too much. It's like a talking feds 5 words or fewer, tongue in cheek, but it's not tongue in cheek. Take them to CCOT prison, the hellhole and state of the art torture prison in El Salvador that Abrego Garcia and others were rushed to way back in March. So just think about this for a moment. It means that they were contemplating there could be survivors. It means they had to be understanding at the time, guess what? You can't just blow survivors away. And it means, however, that they wanted to take those survivors and rather than deal with them either in some military setting within the United States, like prisoners of war, since that's what we think they are, like, consider like Al-Qaeda people that we round up on the battlefield. In fact, that's the excellent analogy because we had the whole misadventure after 9/11 where we tried to bring them to Guantanamo and give them no rights. And the Supreme Court refused those efforts, said the United States has functional control. They can't make it a law-free zone. The administration here has a better idea. Let's take these, any survivors. Guess we can't kill them, but that's what they did, of course, on September 2nd. But maybe what we can do is look to our old friend, President Bukele in El Salvador and see there's always room to shove in a few more in CCOT prison. You've seen the pictures and people, piled up in cots and crammed into inhumane conditions and the like. So that's really stunning and calls out for additional investigation. But now, why did we back away from it? Presumably, someone in the administration looked at the 2 Supreme Court opinions after 9/11 and regained sanity and said, what are you trying to do here? You can't take them and put them in a law-free zone. And all of this is, what you couldn't do even if we were in a what the United States wants to call a non-international armed conflict. What's that? That's the kind of situation we're in, say, with Al-Qaeda. They're not a nation, and yet it's fair to call that a war footing, and Congress has approved it. And the whole mismatched analogy that the United States is trying to propound for everything, the 2 extrajudicial killings are a totally separate and I think indefensible issue. But they're trying to say we are on a war footing, and basically convert people in boats that may have drugs that may be going to the United States, but nobody tells, they haven't revealed it to be certain. It's not clear they are certain. The September 2nd boat seemed to have been going to Suriname. But anyway, that somehow is the same as being at war. A completely problematic posture. And what is supposed to be happening, these are criminals. If everything the administration says is right and you extradite criminals and subject them to due process, just like the former president whom Trump pardoned a few days ago, who had put 400 tons of cocaine into the United States, but you don't bomb them with no due process unless you can make the case. And we've heard about it, but haven't seen it. And I think it's really unlikely that it will hold water when we do, that the whole thing is, in fact, the equivalent of a law of war footing. But the big point now, the 2 developments I just want to underscore at the end here, has to do with those two killings of the survivors of the first strike on September 2nd. And it looks like Rogers is shutting down an investigation with no known conclusions and so much more to learn. And second, that the administration was actually, knew you can't just blow them away. So got the better idea of, as in the immigration setting, doing something, the next worst thing or the next best in their view of sticking them in CCOT prison, a plan they wisely tiptoed away from. But it goes to the whole approach and the sense of sort of overkill and complete mismatch of a model of criminal conduct against the United States with an assertion of war and an ability to just blow away any boats that we think may be carrying drugs, or as we call them, narco terrorists. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.